I oftentimes try to find some sort of hot topic. I don't know that I have something like controversial just to get us talking to start. But Astro just released, and I'm curious what people think about this. 4.0.
What?
3 months after launching 3.0, which is exciting.
Just depends on how you're doing versioning.
It does.
What,
I mean,
but those
are
yeah, exactly.
Those are major versions, though. Yeah.
Yep.
And also, fun fact: when I was getting ready to launch my course, I think September 1st or whenever it was, they announced they were shipping 3.0 like a couple days before.
Oh, I saw that.
And so I had to prepare everything for 3.0 to have it ready, which worked out really well. But then I'm also kind of going back and tweaking some stuff for 4.0 now. So it's exciting, but also it's like really fast for them to do major versions. Yeah.
So does that mean you're doing a new course, or are you just like updating?
Not a new course. It's funny. I recorded a quick video the other day of me updating a video for 4.0. And what I did was take a screenshot of the version tag on the homepage, because I was showing the homepage in this segment, and I took a screenshot of the thing that had the 4.0 tag, and I just shrunk it down to just that part and then laid it on top of what was on my screen as 3.0, like from the original recording. Because most of there's not really breaking changes for the most part, at least not in the course. So that same intro, I could keep the exact same thing, and the website's still basically the same. And I just like covered up 3.0 for 4.0 for like 10 seconds. But I was planning on adding a bunch of content too. And now I'm just going to make sure everything is ready for 4.0 and then add the content so that I'm not having to backtrack later on if I needed to.
Got it.
I saw Jason Linksdorf tweet, or I'm still going to call it Twitter all day long.
Okay,
He tweeted that Astro is like his number one, his go-to.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was kind of pretty bold.
Yeah, I'm not there yet, but I really liked using it, to be honest. Like almost no friction involved. You know, the docs were super good. I didn't have any trouble finding what I needed. Everything worked how I expected it. Good stuff.
Did you get your caching issue working on your website?
No. Right now.
I'm so sorry to bring it up. And James, if you wanted something controversial, there you go.
Yeah.
Remix.
And it just seems odd because like everybody is kind of talking about Vercel and Next and some of the decisions they're making, and I just keep hitting every wall, whether it comes to Next.js or whether it comes to Vercel. And basically adding cache headers like they talk about in the docs to Remix apps isn't working. So I don't know what, they've got like 2 or 3 different layers of caching: edge caching, serverless caching, data cache. They're all different. And somewhere along the way, it ain't working, or it's hitting a region that's not cached or something.
Have you tweeted at Ryan Florence?
Ryan answered.
He did.
I made a GitHub discussion.
Okay.
Like an issue on Vercel's half, and he basically said, it may not be a single cache. It could be a distributed cache. So like if people are hitting your website from different regions, it's slowly populating distributed caches. So you could possibly get misses, because he's like, I don't know. Like, we don't know the infrastructure. It's the secret sauce. So you're just kind of dealing with whatever's happening in the background. And so I'm at the point where I'm like, I'm going to deploy a single long running node server, and I am in charge. I am the captain. I don't want to rely on like some crazy caching strategies.
Let me just I'm going to
let me guess.
I'm the instigator.
Redwood can solve all of that.
No. I wasn't even going to say Redwood. I wasn't even going to bring up Redwood, which I will tell you a funny story about Redwood in a second. But I love Vercel, so I just wanted to caveat that I love Vercel.
Yes.
And huge heart. I don't have my mug on my desk. And Brandon from Flight Control, was saying that like Vercel is the what do you call it? What's it?
Something negative, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was. I was trying to remember what it's a kid
Darth
brand.
Vader
It's just the Little Tykes version of hosting.
Of like hosting. Yeah. I can see that. But I
Fisher
also
Price.
see
That's what he said, not Little Tykes. The Fisher Price version of hosting.
I see it as like Vercel is the Apple of what it does.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You buy in and you get everything you want, and it's all included, and it works super good together.
Yeah.
You try to step out of that boundary,
Yeah.
things start to, you get friction.
It'll just break your phone.
So I'm basically, I'm just trying to say, I'm trying to be a little bit more independent with my technology choices because I want my website to be around for a long time, and I don't know what's going to happen with the next version of Next.js or Vercel's hosting platform or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
trying to make more conscious decisions there.
So my funny story, yesterday I hosted or co-hosted the Redwood Town Hall, which is fantastic. A bunch of fun stuff coming out. But I'm sitting there drinking my coffee out of my Vercel mug, which I'm like, this is fine. It's fine. We host on Vercel. That's fine. But there's on one side the Vercel logo, on the other side the Next.js logo.
Nice.
So I was like so paranoid the entire time. Next.js has to be on this side. Nobody can see it on the stream.
I mean, I record every episode of this podcast with my syntax water bottle.
We've got to work on that.
The worst.
Yeah.
The worst. We got to get some swag out.
Yeah.
Can I tell you all one secret before we start?
Always.
Relevant to what Brad just mentioned. So there's a job open for Syntax.
There is.
I saw
Video
that.
creator. I applied. I had an interview yesterday.
You
like
applied?
HR,
What?
but yeah.
Whoa.
What?
The only. It's.
What?
I mean, it's the only thing that I would consider applying for.
That's a conflict
now.
of interest.
What, with the podcast?
Yeah,
I
just
don't-
joking.
I don't think
Not
so.
if no, get Century to acquire compressed.
I would
No
love that.
conflict.
I know.
That's perfect. Make that part of your negotiation term.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a little different because this is a regular job, not a acquiring James. But we'll see.
Yeah, they wanted like what, an editor, right? Essentially.
two separate thing. No,
A
so
content creator
there's-
and
yeah,
a,
there's a
uh,
senior
Podcast
video
editor.
content creator and a podcast editor, which I sent.
Ashley.
I sent to Ashley. Yeah,
She messaged me about it.
yeah.
Nice.
Anyway, so we'll see. Like I'm not trying to think about it too much. I think it'd be super cool. Obviously to work with Wes and Scott. So we'll see what happens. But it wouldn't. They said there would be an interview next week or the week after, and then one after the holidays. So it would be wrapped up for a while anyway.
I don't mean to blow smoke or, boost your ego any more than it already is. But I don't know
I'm
why they
listening.
wouldn't give it to you. I don't know why you wouldn't get it. So, I mean, it would.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people. I imagine there's a lot of people applying for the role, and they may have some
Yeah,
specific things that they have in mind.
That's
But
true.
yeah, I think I'm pretty
But I
amazing.
mean,
I
you
agree.
fit. You fit the job description. So,
Yep.
and you would do a stellar job. So,
Thank you. Well, that's my secret for today. So
Yeah.
there's the
I'll
podcast.
apply some social pressure.
Yeah, let them know.
Just set a poll for please hire James.
Oh yeah, that's a great idea.
In video format, just to prove that like the video stuff works.
Yeah.
Totally.
James or
James
Riot.
yeah.
James or
We could have a Century
nothing.
boycott.
everyone.
I'll start that campaign.
Oh, it's funny.
I love
Well,
it.
on that note, do you want to officially start?
Yeah, let's do it.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Syntax.
What? James, you're fired. You're fired.
You already jumped up. That was the-
That was a joke, but
No,
it was
it
well done, I
wasn't.
think.
No, it
really
wasn't.
was. Absolutely
Oh, man,
was.
you got
no,
me.
what's funny though is I do have a big fear of doing that because I used to listen to Syntax more and I would think about that a lot, and it's FM and blah. Anyway, this was definitely a joke.
You want to
though.
join their team? This is going to be clipped as a social.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Compressed FM, a podcast all about web development and design. In this episode, we are going to talk about next steps in your career, making first steps in your career, and the fear potentially of moving forward. I also haven't done this in a while, and I forgot to have the music ready. Dramatic pause.
Fired.
I know.
2 strikes.
Web development and design, who would have guessed? Well, we can do them both, even add a little zest. So turn up the volume, get ready for the best. Let's get it started in this episode of Compress.
What's up, everyone? My name is James Q. Quick, and I am a developer, speaker, and teacher.
Hello, my name is Amy Dutton. I am a lead maintainer on the Redwood JS core team.
Hey, y'all. My name is bradgarropy, and I'm a front-end developer at Atlassian.
And today we are joined by someone, I wonder if you remember this background or not, but someone whose name I heard basically as a legend in South Florida for several years when I started my career in South Florida. But anyway, welcome to the show, Cecil Phillip. Do you want to introduce yourself and tell people a little bit about what you do?
I appreciate that, man. Thank you so much for having me here. Hey, everybody. My name is Cecil Phillip, developer advocate at Stripe. Yeah, super excited to chat with you all today. So I want to start with asking this question because I heard on the
We're
street
flipping it around.
Well, I heard that intro is James. Are you rapping
Yes.
on that intro? Is that really you?
Yeah. So Amy saw the story a bunch of times, but basically when we were starting this, I was like, I could rap something, and she was like, oh, okay. And then when I did it, she was like, oh, that's actually like really good. So anyway, yes, that is
Okay,
me. Yeah.
all right.
It's work for hire. If this dev thing doesn't work out for him.
Well, fun fact, I actually have that in my official sponsorship opportunities to do a rap video for $10,000 if anybody's interested. So let me know.
Also, if we want to apply more social pressure, I want him to do that live from stage.
Yes.
Yeah.
As far as social pressure goes, that's a pretty small one. So I could probably do that, but we'd have to have the background, like the music actually playing behind me really loud too. So
I'll talk to Clark. We'll see what we can work out at that conference.
Yeah. I love it.
That's crazy. So do you have like developer rap beef and stuff like that? Is that a thing?
Developer rap beefs? No, I don't really know anyone else that does it. But I did do the Auth0 rap video. So that's I think they moved it over to the Octadev channel. And then I made a couple of like jokey developer raps, but really rap has been like a diary for me. Like not to be like too dramatic, but when my mom passed away, I recorded a song. My dad passed away, I recorded a song. A year later, I recorded a song reflecting on that. Like it's been
you wrote Jess a song.
I wrote Jess. Did I show that? Did I play you that?
Yeah.
Okay, we're getting all off topic. But yeah, so it's like a creative, emotional outlet and journal for me since college. Yeah.
Well, even with you saying that, and I kind of still think that this is on topic too, because writing for me has always been like a very therapeutic like process. You know what I mean? Throughout like my entire life, and not just talking about writing code, obviously, but like just putting your thoughts down on paper. Because like as you're trying to figure out, well, what am I supposed to do? How am I going to solve this issue? How am I going to like work through the 1,000,001 things that I think I need to be doing or I should do? I don't know. For me, it just kind of helps to like put things down on paper. You know what I mean? Kind of put things into perspective.
Absolutely. That's something I've wanted to do more of and haven't. And I also haven't written a song in a while either, which I keep telling myself I need to. So we'll see. I'm also like still sick from like 2 weeks ago, which is super annoying, which is why I just went on mute and coughed. And anyway, but back to regularly scheduled topic. So I mentioned you like as a legend. I don't know if you remember. I don't know if we like maybe met once or twice. I think not much when I was actually in South Florida, but I heard your name all the time as a big name, especially. I don't know if you were a developer advocate at the time, but I was getting into developer advocacy, starting my career at Microsoft. And one of the things you talked about in like preparation for this was kind of the journey of moving to a new company or country and starting a career. So I'm wondering, what's like the origin story for you in moving here, starting from scratch, and maybe we'll get into some of the struggles with that along the way.
Yeah. Let's talk about it. So for folks that don't know me, again, I'm not from this country. Originally, I was born in Antigua. Quick geography lesson. So it's like a little tiny island in the Caribbean. If you kind of look at a map, the Caribbean is kind of like a quarter circle. You kind of think about it that way. And so we're like the furthest points before you like hit the Atlantic. So it's like us and then London, right? Like it's just like pure ocean between us and them. So that's kind of where I came from, born and raised, lived there until I was 19. And then I had to go to school, right? I had to figure out, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And then growing up in the islands, right? Like at the time, computing was I'm going to assume it's very different. Like there was a very different perspective of what it meant to be like a computer professional, right? The people that were around me at the time, it wasn't like programmers and engineers. Like I didn't have computers in school. That wasn't a thing. My dad had a machine that he brought home. Funny, I call it a machine. But he had a machine he brought home, compact Presario. If y'all remember those compact Presarios. And, for me, it was just, people would come by, they'd fix the printer, they'd fix the modem. And I was just like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like I can do that, right? And it looks like, these guys are driving, really fancy cars, or at least, fancy for Caribbean standards, I guess. And I'm like, okay, well, I can do that, and kind of fast forward the story a little bit, so came to the United States and started studying. And one of the things that happens when you travel in general and you kind of cross borders and you're able to like experience other cultures, there's a certain level of perspective that you get, right? Like very different from your own. And for me, it was, the only thing I knew about America and American culture was television. You know what I mean? Like BT and MTV and VH1 and whatever. Like that's what I watched. I'm like, oh, okay, this is what it is like. This is what it's going to be like when I go to college. We're going to do those types of things, right? And kind of being in the space, like it was very different, right? And then now understanding, oh, well, I have more options. I don't have to like plug in cables and fix printers. I can do something different. You know what I mean? I can work for Netflix, or I can work for Microsoft, or all these companies that would come to career fairs and they're like, oh, we want to talk to you. You want to talk to me for what? like I didn't understand it. And I think I'm kind of going back to like the main topic of this conversation. I think that was the first point that I really started to get like fear, right? Like I was like, well, I'm so far away from home. I had no intentions of staying here. I'm seeing all these different options. People are asking me to move to like California, which again, coming from where I come from, is like half a world away. You know what I mean? And I'm just like, I don't want to do that. Like that seems terrifying for me, right? Again, looking at the scale of the community that I'm from. And, I think over time, you kind of just have to, trust your gut and start to learn about like, if all these other people around me could do it, I could probably figure it out too at some point. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, it was definitely a lesson. Like my beginning was definitely a lesson in perspective. I was just like, let's just try it and see what happens. And we're just gonna keep going until someone tells you to stop.
That's a really healthy perspective to have, where it's like you're joining the masses of people who have already done this, and so it's a very hopeful take on that. Now, that seems to say, like, did you go through any hardships when trying to like, get your first jobs, or when you were talking to these companies? Did you have any bad interviews? And throughout that, did you maintain that hopeful attitude in going through these challenges?
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you, I'm a big chicken. So everything that I'm gonna tell you is like rooted in like fear and a lot of self-doubt, And it's funny because as a person that like goes on stage for a living to speak to people, that does podcasts and shows for a living, they'll be like, like it's very like anti what people see on the outside. So I remember, getting interviews from, again, Microsoft and HP and Netflix. And I remember not going to them. And I didn't go to them because I was like, again, I don't want to move to Seattle because that's half a world away. My parents, my family, my sisters, I don't know anybody that lives there. I have no interest in going that far away. And so again, that was my perspective. I don't want to go to California. California is far. I don't want to go to Texas. Texas is far, right? And so obviously looking back in retrospect, it's probably a little silly, you know what I mean? But, at the time, like that's just how I felt about it. Like my family is important to me. The people that I care about are important to me. And so I wanted to be able to be close enough that was comfortable for me to like kind of move back and forth. So it wasn't even I never got a call. I never got asked. It was just I don't want to go. And I just completely avoided even having those conversations. And so I ended up taking a job locally. Locally as in like locally in Florida, in South Florida at a university. And that was my first job. And for folks that may or may not know, like when you're an international student, person, whatever the case is, there's multiple layers of like employment status that you have to go through, right? So like right out of college, like I had to get an F1B visa, right? Like your F1 is kind of like, well, after college, you have a year. Well, I had a year. I think now it's like 6 months or something like that. I think they pulled it back. But you have a year to find a job or you need to get out the country, kind of thing. So, did that for a year. And then after that, I had to get an H-1B visa because, again, your F1 lasts a year. The H-1B visa is like, typical work visa. I think if you're a medical person, you get like a different thing, like a J-1 or something. But as an engineer, I had to get an H-1. H-1 lasts 6 years. And then, your company, whoever you work for is technically, I don't want to say they own you, but like, if you don't work for them, like you got to go, you got to get out, right? So every step for me was like it was a very stressful situation because it was like, well, what if they don't like me? What if they kick me out, right? So like I have to work extra hard now, right? Like I have to outwork everybody else in this room, else I'm gonna get kicked out of the country, or I'm gonna have to find someone else to hire me, right? I didn't really want to go through that process. And so I think because of that energy that I had, I was like, I gotta go harder than everyone else, right? Like I have to win. You know what I'm saying? And again, I grew up in the '80s, right? So I have like that Jordan Tyson very aggressive mentality. At least when it comes to work, you know what I mean? And I try to be competitive respectfully. You know what I mean? Like I don't, I never bring down or disrespect my teammates. But at the same time too, I'm like, oh well, you're not gonna outwork me today. Like I gotta, you know what I'm saying? I gotta go get it, right? Because again, I'm working to stay, not just for a paycheck. So my motivations are different. And one of the things I'm sorry.
This is awesome because like you so well put into words like exactly why I think folks who are not from the States originally have such an amazing work ethic and amazing attitude, and that their contributions are always so great. The only thing that sucks is it's driven by almost fear a little bit in like, dang, I have to work to stay.
Yes, it's like it's a survival instinct, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't have a choice. Again, my parents were fortunate enough to pay for me to come to college, and so not everyone from the Caribbean is privileged enough for that to happen, right? Particularly like for you to go to college, in a completely different continent, right? We have University of West Indies and a couple islands, Jamaica and Trinidad and stuff like that. That's usually what happens for a lot of folks. So when people are able to go outside, or maybe you have family members or whatever the case that are able to bring you over, that's truly a blessing, right? And I know what college costs, and I was like, well, I have to win. Like I have to prove not only to myself but like to my parents respectfully that like their investment wasn't wasted. You know what I mean? Because it's a lot of money. Like I didn't get a scholarship. You know what I mean? Like I have to figure this out. So yeah, it was very much just a survival instinct of like, I have to do this. And I think in doing that, kind of going back to like what James was talking about, I think in doing that, very quickly, I became very bored at work. I became super bored because I kept trying to like find different ways to do things. So for folks that don't know me again, like I'm a .NET developer, came up doing like ASP.NET web forms and MVC, and it's always been like web-based type things, right? And so after a while, like when you start to see the same patterns over and over again, it's like, okay, well, let's do something different. Let's try something new, right? This is like, and I'm going to date myself, but this is when like jQuery had just come out, and everyone was like, I'm going to learn jQuery before I learn JavaScript, kind of thing. Like that was like the energy at the time.
There's a hot topic.
And like I went through all of that, and yeah, and then after a while, I was just like, I need more. Like I'm not getting fed. You know what I mean? Metaphorically speaking, I'm not getting fed at work, so I need something else. So I started to go to user groups, right? Which is great. .NET user groups, JavaScript user groups, and just kind of just being in the community. And I think that definitely fed my energy for like that thirst for learning. You know what I mean? Like I was able to meet people that would help me answer questions that I wouldn't get answers to. And again, I don't want to make it sound like I'm talking smack about my teammates, but I think when you're in a certain position, when a certain level of comfort, when it's 5 o'clock, like you're ready to go home. You know what I mean? And I respect it. I get it. Everyone has like a different life that they have to live. For me, I'm 20 odd years old. I just got out of college and I'm trying to like, trying to work for this visa. You know what I mean? Like my perspective is very much of I need to figure this out, right? And I can't just be ordinary. I have to be more than that, right? And so now I'm going to user groups, and funny enough, I'm in the user group and I'm in the back, which I'm sure a lot of us have probably done before. I'm in the back and I'm sitting down and I'm just chilling, right? Like I'm the guy that I'm not talking to anybody. I'm just being quiet and watching what's going on. Have no idea what these people are talking about, but I'm just like absorbing information. You know what I mean? And absorbing and absorbing. I think until one day somebody was like, "Oh, you come here a lot. Do you want to come on stage and like speak?" And I'm like, "What?"
You're like,
Naturally, I'm like,
excuse me?
"What? There's nothing here that I could possibly say to all of you that you don't know already. I just got here. Like I just came. I just got out of college like the other day. What kind of valuable information could I possibly have to share?" And they're like, "Well, hey, well, you have interesting perspectives about this and this and this. You're doing some new stuff. We're still doing the old stuff. Tell us how the new stuff works." I'm like, "Sure, but you got to give me like 6 months." Right? So this is how long in my head I was like, I got to prepare for this talk, but I'm not just going to show up and do it. I need time to like, one, get my nerves in check because again, the big chicken, I'm terrified. I got to get my nerves in check, but then two, I got to make sure that whatever's going to come out of my mouth is like accurate. It's correct. It works. It makes sense. Like I have to check my checks kind of thing. And then just made sure that, I was able to, present like the best picture of what's there, if that makes sense.
We had
Yeah, they
like,
always say that like perspective is the most valuable thing anybody can bring to the table. Right? Unless you're like the library author of the next greatest thing, which that only happens few and far between. Just the way you interpret the world is valuable, and it'll vibe with somebody else, and then you just kind of really connected with somebody on that level.
For sure. And I think in like an undertone of that story is a little bit of, I never had mentors, right? Like no one ever showed me like, I learned how to program in college, but like no one ever showed me like how to write software. You know what I mean? Like being able to spit out syntax and being able to write software is not the same thing. And so no one ever showed me how to write software. And I realized how valuable that is for people that are starting. And I think it's one of the reasons too that kind of led me down to advocacy, because I know when it's like not to have information, right? I know what it's like when people have information and they don't want to give it to you, and it sucks, to be honest with you. And I know what it's like to like fight and claw to try and get it, whether it's like grinding and reading books. This is when people used to read programming books. I don't think people read programming books anymore. But this is when, the programming books I had were like, I don't know if you remember, there was a publisher called Rocks Publishing. I don't know if they still are around or not. But they were like a big, all their books were red with like white and yellow writing. And they used to have like these 1,000-page books, right? So it's like intro to Java, intro to C++, intro to this, that, or the other, like these super, super big books. But that's what I used to do, right? I used to sit down. I used to, every night I come home from work, I'm reading these books, right? Because like no one's giving me the information that I want to have. So I think now as an advocate, like I appreciate the value of sharing information, and not even just sharing the information, but like, adding guidance and perspective. You guys hear me say perspective a lot, but like adding the guidance and perspective to the industry, because I think that goes a long way. And that's not something that, is taught naturally.
I think perspective means everything. And we have almost the exact same story in terms of having that first talk so early in your career, because I started my career as a technical evangelist, developer advocate at Microsoft, where I had to do that. I didn't know anything about that. I'd never done it before. Just like everyone else in college, if I gave a presentation, it was terrible and blah, blah, blah. And it was like 2 minutes long, right? And so then I found myself being expected to like give talks to rooms full of developers that have been writing code longer than I've been alive, basically, or like close to, right? And they're used to doing things. But what I realized pretty quickly is they were used to doing things that they'd been doing, which at my time was like older .NET stuff that you kind of mentioned. And I was getting into app development at Microsoft for Windows Phone or for eventually Windows 8, Windows 10, etc. So even though they had infinite more overall programming knowledge and experience than I had, they didn't know that thing. And I think that's the most important thing for people to know in potentially getting into speaking, if you're interested in the slightest, is like you don't have to know more than your audience. You have to know more about the topic that you're covering, or at least enough to be able to give the presentation. And there's also nothing wrong with saying, I don't know. And it takes confidence to say that in front of a room full of people, because developers can be assholes sometimes and try to get you to mess up and try to challenge you on things. But if you can be comfortable and confident saying, I don't know, when appropriate, and be able to share the other things that you do know, there are there are infinite ways that you can find stuff that you can talk about for different sets of audiences.
Yeah, I think in what you're saying, I see there being like two on a high level, like there's two types of people like in that story, right? There's you, the hey, I'm learning some new stuff and I'm afraid to talk to the people that know the old stuff. But then like now being the person that, I've been in the industry over 15 years at this point. Now being the person that has been around a little while, I understand the side of like, oh, you're doing the new stuff. I'm afraid to touch that. Right? So like in that conversation, like there's so many emotions. We don't really talk about emotions as developers. I don't think we really should. But like there's so many emotions that are happening at that point because it's like I'm looking at the new person, people, as like, oh, this is who's going to take my job, right? Right? Like if I choose not to learn the new thing, so it's 2023. If I choose not to be an AI developer or a prompt engineer or whatever the case is, what does that mean for my career for the next 10 to 15 years?
Oh.
Right? You know what I mean? Again, I'm a .NET guy. I do web stuff. You know what I mean? I don't know anything about like scikit-learn or like any of those AI frameworks. Is that something I should have to do to like maintain my longevity over time? You know what I mean? Am I gonna, have to, start to do jobs I don't want to do? Like there's so many questions, right, that are happening. And they're all happening in that brief moment of I'm either the person that's sitting down, that's been in here for 15, 20 years, or I'm the person that's on stage and I just learned this thing yesterday to come talk to you about it. And the thing to remember is like everybody in the room is freaked out, to be honest with you. Well, most of the people, like you said, there's some people that have attitudes and stuff like that. But we don't talk about them.
There are those. We don't give them credibility.
But everybody's concerned, right? Because at the end of the day, all our goals is to make a living and to go home to our family. That's it. Like that is what your goal is. You know what I mean? I don't know if all of you guys have kids or whatever the case is, but like my goal, like
as of recently, the answer is yes.
There you go. Well, see, congratulations to you for that. You know what I mean? And for me, when I had my sons, my son's 11. My perspective on like work was very different. You know what I mean? It was okay. I have responsibilities now. And as much as I love to like be up until 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, voluntarily, no one made me do it. I chose to do that. I chose that life, right? I got to make sure that like this little boy eats and has clothes and has a roof over his head and has the information that he needs to be successful, right? And that's a scary thing too, right? And now if we kind of look at the industry now, and I know we're kind of like jumping around a little bit in conversation, but if we kind of look at the industry now and see how volatile that it is, we see a lot of folks are getting laid off all the time. I thought last year, 2022 was like the big layoff, but looks like it's just round 2 is coming around again, right? And it's starting to happen. And what happens? We're all terrified. We're all scared because we have people that depend on us and we have to take care of them. And, regardless of whatever whatever part you play in like the life cycle of software, you know what I mean? Like you're concerned.
I'm curious about with layoffs, and it is an absolute shit show right now. And I'm scared, and I work for myself, and I'm scared for my wife. I'm scared. Like it is what it is. That's the state that we're in. But one of the things we're seeing is, and it's not a huge surprise, is DevRel always feels like it's the first to go. And I can tell you the easy reason why. It's because DevRel doesn't tie directly up to dollars typically. DevRel being developer relations, these are the people, the teams that go out to conferences, that give talks, that create content, etc., to be part of the community and kind of show off products and things that their company creates that they think would be useful for people. But it seems like that is particularly hard hit, and it seems like hiring for that is slowing. What do you think about kind of the state of DevRel right now, and what does that look like in the future? Because some people are guessing that like DevRel as we know it is kind of over.
Yeah. I think if you have a DevRel team, you hired these people for a reason, right? And we have to remember like what that reason is. So, and here's why I say this, right? Because I think this topic is very like, very triggering for me, right? Because I've seen so many amazing people get let go and be in very uncomfortable positions. If you can't figure out the role of DevRel in your company, and you decided to bring these people here to your company to do this work, then I think that's a failure of leadership. And I think leadership, whatever your chain looks like, whether you're, I don't know, some people have DevRel in marketing or sales, or sometimes they have them in engineering, it doesn't matter, right? You should know, why did you bring these people on and the value that they bring? And if I don't know, after how many years or months or whatever, you can't tie the line between the value of DevRel and your product, then I usually go back to the question of, well, why did you hire these people in the first place? Like, why did you take them for wherever they are and bring them into your company, knowing that you have no idea what in the world you're doing with them, right? And I know, I went through that period of when like everyone was hiring DevRel teams. You know what I mean? Like I can tell the story. Not I'm picking up Microsoft, but like I want to tell the story of, while I was on the Cloud Advocates team, I started and there were 20 people, and when I left, there were like close to 200 people in that org. Right? That's a lot of people. You know what I mean? Do we need all those people? Do we? And again, I'm not picking up Microsoft. I'm sorry if Microsoft people are listening. Do we need all these people? Like, what's everyone's role and position? You know what I mean? And then there's this whole psyche of, can you properly attribute the effort of all of those individual people? Do you have the leadership structure to manage them, right? Obviously, Microsoft being a monolith, but I think it's the same story that you can ask for anybody. You know what I mean? If you choose to bring DevRel into your company, well, why? And like, what are you doing? And like, what are the metrics that you're going to measure them by? And so, I have conversations with like startup folks and, new companies and things like that. And they're like, oh, we need DevRel. Like, this is important. And I'm like, but why? What are you going to do with it? Right? And I think it's a fair question to ask, because like you see, like the market is very volatile. I'm going to bring DevRel people in and I don't know what the hell they're going to do. And then in 6 months, I'm going to let them all go. Right? And what does that do to the confidence of those people? What does that do to the psyche of those people? What does that do to the families that they're supporting? Right? Like again, this is not a technical conversation, but again, we have to think about, the people as we're like trying to make these types of decisions. You know what I mean? You should know what DevRel means to you as leaders and as managers or whatever the case is before you decide to do that. Now, for the people that do kind of figure it out, you know what I mean? I think it's your job to make sure that the value is always shown to like whatever that chain is that goes above, right? I mean, that's what leaders are, right? Leaders are supposed to lead, but I think in all layers of, I want to talk about software because I don't know about other industries, so I can't talk about them. But in all layers of the technical business, you know what I mean? Like, it's the job of the leader to set the tone. Like, this is what we're doing. This is what we're working on. And then this is why it's important. You know what I mean? If you're just going to hire a bunch of folks and fly them around on jets and, you know what I mean, send them to fancy dinners to talk to people, yeah, that's an expense. You know what I mean? And then when things get bad, you're going to be like, oh, sorry, don't need you anymore. And they're like, well, but what did I do? Like, what's wrong with me that, you know what I mean, you had to let me go, right? Like, am I not doing what you asked me to do? Am I not, meeting the objectives that you asked me to meet? Because if I'm not, I get it. But if I am, then well, what's the problem? And if you can't communicate, speaking to the leaders, if you can't communicate my value, then I don't think that's my problem. I think that's yours, right? And again, I expect leaders to be leaders and take responsibility. But usually what happens, again, in the entire chain is, the people at the, I don't want to say people at the bottom, but the people that are not leading are going to take, we're going to take the bullets. You know what I mean? We're going to take the bullets. We're going to get let go. We're going to get tossed to the side. And, whoever is in charge is going to be, oh, look, well, he just cut spending by $2 or $3 million. Let's give him a raise, right? That's what happens. And I don't think it's fair, but yeah, that's just kind of my rant on like my feeling of like the volatility of DevRel. Like, I don't think companies understand what DevRel means. And we don't have any standards to say like, this is what it is. I have my standards, but like I don't think the industry has standards to say this is what it is. And because of that, now when bad things happen and people are like, we need to cut expenses, like that's one of the first places that's gonna get cut.
I think this is a good time to like maybe get in the nuts and bolts of it, because I think depending on company size, the role of DevRel changes quite a bit. I think of like smaller companies, like back in the day, it was like Gatsby and Netlify when they were first coming up. You almost identified the company as a whole based on the folks who were doing DevRel for the company at the time. But you scale up, companies get bigger. You know, you're at Stripe. There's bigger companies out there like Microsoft, you had mentioned, or I work at Atlassian. You know, what does a DevRel do at those larger companies? And maybe you could just kind of tell us like what your day to day looks like. What does Stripe expect out of you for your job, and how do you think their metrics are in measuring your success?
Yeah, I think so. For me, the foundation of it is, DevRel is developer relations, right? So if we kind of just look at the word and we break it down into components, right? Like we have technical folks that are here to, build relationships with the community, right? And so you have to advocate internally and externally, like on a very fundamental level. That's what it's for. And the reason why your company should want that is because, particularly now, like we're in the world of like I need to see it in front of me. Like the relationships are important. And a lot of the times your engineers, your PMs, your technical, folks internally, they can't go out and they can't meet with customers all the time. They can't go to conferences all the time. They can't be in the community, and then they can't get the feedback that they need to make certain decisions, right? And then that's where we come in, right? Like we're able to add that value based on like whatever the objective is. Now, specifically at Stripe, like Stripe is an interesting case because we are, like I look at Stripe and the strategy I take with DevRel at Stripe is we are a component of like the story that is your application, right? Like no one builds a Stripe application. Like
yeah, exactly.
That's not really like the thing, right?
Yeah.
Because we don't build programming languages, we don't have a cloud, there's no hosting, we don't build an IDE, we don't build operating systems, right? We are an API. And so then that means that we are a component of the story that you're trying to tell, which is the product that you're trying to build. And so for me, the benefit there is one, obviously letting people know like what the product is or products are and what we can do, but then also two, building those relationships with other people so we can paint a bigger picture, right? Because again, I can't do anything with Stripe, the API by itself. But you know what? I could grab Okta Auth0, I could go talk to the Twilio folks, I could talk to MongoDB, and here I have advocacy teams from like a variety of different places. And then now we could start to make like a more whole picture. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
because like
relationships, I'm sorry?
Stripe is very dependent on, not dependent, but closely tied to your database solution, because guess what? You're going to have a table of users or in your auth solution, like you just said, you're going to have a table of users. You got to mark which ones are active or subscribed or purchased or whatnot. And so like to be an effective DevRel at Stripe, you almost have to bring in the other pieces and talk about the rest of the application that people need to build.
Right, because I think as a DevRel person, talking purely around like, here's what my API does is not interesting. At least it's not interesting for me, right? Like you could read the docs, you could, download the sample, like you could look at the thing yourself. But where people really want is, how do I architect this thing? Like, how do I lay out my application? How do I test it? Maybe I'm building a Kubernetes thing. What is the story with like Stripe and serverless and Kubernetes and messaging look like? You know what I mean? Big question that we get a lot is like, how do I scale up handling webhooks? You know what I mean? Like all of these are the types of things that people are like, okay, when a thing happens over here, I want to kick off a workflow. How does that happen? What workflow engines do you plug in? What kind of messages that you send that I could use and store my data? Like it's a bigger question rather than like, what is the request response situation? Right. You know what I mean? Like no one cares about that. Well, we care, but on the larger scale, we care more so about like the story, right? Again, and I say story a lot because that's what we do as DevRel folks. Like we tell the story, or we try to tell a story that shows folks, hey, you're on VMware, you're in AWS, GCP, Linode, whatever you're using, Python, Node, Elixir, whatever. Like, let's take those components together and like tell a story that makes sense to you and that's interesting to you, and so that you could see, okay, well, this is how I can do it too, right? And so now it becomes about inspiration, right? Like, how can I inspire you with this story? You know what I mean? Is this a thing that you're interested and care about? And if so, then hopefully, I don't know, hopefully you use the product, right? And you'll be happy with it.
Because of the integration aspect of this, do you find yourself like building a ton of demos or blogging about a ton of demos, or is most of your work focused on showcasing different integrations?
I think a lot of it is definitely doing a lot of demos, but I think, like I said, like in building the demo, a lot of things happen with a demo or a video, right? Like a video and a demo is never just a video and a demo. It is a bigger, at least for us as a profession, it's a bigger thing. Now I'll give you an example. I did a live stream the other day, .NET for AWS on their Twitch channel. And yeah, I went and I showed a demo. Great, had questions, it came off, right? When we came off camera, the two advocates from AWS were like, hey, really like that demo. I would love if we could work together and create a branch of it that like highlights AWS products, right? Now, I don't work for AWS. I don't frankly care, to be honest with you. But what's interesting there is we could now have like an avenue for collaboration. Now our companies could work together. Now, again, DevRel, right? Developer relations. I'm building that relationship with this team that's over there. And now we're going to have not just a company relationship. Now I have a personal relationship with these two people, right? And now, you know what? I could say we've worked together. We've coded together. We've created like a different version of the story together, specifically for a different audience of people that I wasn't originally targeting. You know what I mean? That means that now, without me, obviously I did a little bit of work, but like now I could, if I wanted, I could take my demo and I could go to a customer that's hosted on AWS or a customer that's using SQS or Lambda or whatever, and I could tell the story of this is what Stripe looks like in this context. So again, like the demo is never just the demo, and the video is never just the video. Like there's so much more that can come out of it. And then even with that too, because now a big part of it is that bi-directional feedback. I could say, hey, well, you guys did this thing. What was that like for you? And I can get direct feedback from those people. I can take it internally. I can file Jira tickets and sled and Slack messages and whatever else needs to happen. And I can share that information back and forth, right? And all of that from just building a demo, you know what I mean? And so again, when trying to show what's the value that, DevRel brings to your company, that's exactly what it is, right? Like it's, how can we take what seems like a small thing, right? It's like, well, this is just a Git repo with some random commits from Cecil, and then turn it into a whole experience that now it's, okay, now we have connections with GitHub and AWS and da-da-da-da. Now we can go and talk to serverless people. And now I have like a list of like feature requests or issues that I can go back to the product team. We can have a conversation about it.
That feedback cycle, I think, is one of the most overlooked benefits of DevRel, because a big value of DevRel is being the gateway between the developer community and the product outside of just forums. Like I hate when people say like, go post in a forum. And I understand like not everyone can just answer my questions directly. Like I totally get that. But if you have that relationship, then you get the trusted feedback and then you pass it along, and that becomes like things that you can act on, things that products can act on. And otherwise they don't have, unless they just look for people complaining in forums, mostly they don't have that. They don't have those connections. So I think that's a huge part of it. And I think you really highlighted the struggle and the reason that it's hard. The reason that a lot of people don't understand the value of DevRel is because it's hard to communicate, and most people don't do a good enough job of recognizing what you just said and the value that's there. Even if it is, you have to be able to communicate that as a story that other people can understand, and that's a significant challenge.
Yeah, for sure. It's not easy because I can't put a dollar amount to it, right? Like you can't put a dollar amount to relationships. And I kind of look at DevRel like, we're like the PR of like, we're like public relations of the tech world, right? Like that's kind of what we do. It's not as glamorous as it is being like PR for an actor or something like that. But like essentially that's what it is. And our job is to bring attention, hopefully positive attention, and share feedback with the people that are on. So it's like Amy. I'm gonna pick on Amy for a second because she's like chilling in the corner. I can imagine working on a framework. You appreciate hey, well, I can't be in the issues all the time or on Discord all the time, or someone found an issue from a use case that you weren't really thinking about because maybe you don't use XYZ components. And so you appreciate that, right? And then you put it in and everyone's like, oh my gosh, like Redwood just created this new really cool feature. And I think the difference and the parallels with open source is like, with open source, like there's attribution. You know what I mean? Like you cut a release and then you could tag people like, oh, these people helped us do this thing, right? And then, for folks that pay attention, you could look through it and you could be like, oh, wow, like this person is consistently adding value to this project. Versus DevRel, like no one's gonna tag me on a feature that got released. Like people don't do that. They don't even tag the engineers, right? So like that's not a thing that happens. Like that's not an external thing that you're gonna see. And so now when it comes down to, what value did you bring? You could be like, okay, well, I went on the AWS thing, or I came on Compressed and we were talking about some stuff and it was cool and people liked it and they went to the website, but I can't prove it, right? Like I'm just saying stuff and it's like my word against your thoughts kind of thing.
I do like what you said though about establishing relationships, because since you brought up Redwood, what's interesting is we have over 50 plus partners that we work with to be able to integrate with. And so those relationships really are key to the success of the framework and key to the success of the community. So a lot of what I'm doing now has been about building and forming those relationships, not just about writing code or just about a demo or just about a video.
Yeah.
Love it. It's probably a good time to move into our last section, which is our picks and plugs section. I know.
Yeah.
I know. So I was going to try this thing. We usually say that when we get to this point. We're going to edit this out now. But we usually say, oh, we forgot to prep you. But I didn't want to call that out. I just wanted to see if we could get by with it without warning him. So we didn't have to edit it. But now that Amy's ruined it. So we do this thing.
That's fine. We can freestyle it. I'm cool. We can do it.
I think it'll work out. I'll do it and we'll see. So we can now move into our last section of the podcast, which is our picks and plugs section, where we pick something that we've watched or read or bought on Amazon or used, whatever it is recently that we enjoyed, and then something either personal or community that we want to plug as well. Amy, I know you're shorter on time. Do you want to go first with picks and plugs?
I do. I was trying to look up because I actually filled some in. Oh yeah. So my pick for this week, I just downloaded and installed this app on my computer, and it's called Paste. So James, I know you have a preference with a clipboard history.
How did you find this, by the way?
Manager. I don't know.
Oh man, why? I would love to take credit for it because they posted that application on my Black Friday deals for developers website.
Oh, no, I think somebody was talking about SetApp. I can't remember whether it came through SetApp or I was looking for it. I could have easily been looking for it. So I use clipboard history through Raycast, which I absolutely love. It's fantastic. But right now, this gets into my plug. With the advent of CSS and the advent of JavaScript, there's certain snippets that I'm using every day to drop into an email to say, hey, this is where you get support. And hey, we're sponsored by Redwood. And so I just got tired of typing that stuff over and over again. Not that it was hard, but one, let's just be more efficient. And two, let's minimize typos. So the nice thing about Paste is it is a clipboard history manager, but you can also save snippets. And so I have basically a drawer, when you think about it in terms of their layout, a drawer for just Advent stuff where I've saved a bunch of snippets and then I can just drag and drop that history. So it's not just about the clipboard history, but also about saving things like even images and files and things like that. So check that out, Paste app. You can get it directly, I think, through the App Store, but SetApp may have been where I found it. I know people have recommended SetApp before. You pay $10 a month and you get access to their entire library. So I am not a subscriber to SetApp, but I feel like I've bought so many apps that are in SetApp that I could have potentially saved money by just using SetApp instead of buying all these things. So like Bartender, or there's so many. So anyways, my plug, as I kind of alluded to, is going to be the advent of CSS and the advent of JavaScript. So these are 24 challenges that I'm doing during the month of December. And you can like solve the challenges on any framework that you want, but the solutions that I'm providing are within Redwood. So it's been fun to highlight that and some of the updates that the team's been working on, and just having a good time with the community and hanging out in Discord. So join me. It's not too late.
It's never too late.
It's never too late. It's lifetime. Lifetime.
Brad, do you want to go next?
Yeah. Let's see. For me, I watched a really good movie on Netflix. And
Tell
it's
me
still
more.
kind of like a Halloween movie. Like it's a little bit, I wouldn't even call it scary. It's like drama, suspense, thriller. I don't know, but it vibes more with Halloween than it does Christmas. It's called The Platform. It's originally in Spanish, but it was dubbed in English. And it just has this really cool premise of like it's a jail with lots of floors, and one table of food goes down the middle, and people kind of have to fight for it. And that's like the beginning of it. It goes in all sorts of crazy directions. Really cool.
I saw that movie, man. That movie is pretty dope.
Pretty good, yeah. One of the more interesting movies that's come out lately, I would say. And my plug, I've been having a lot of fun on Twitter lately. I've been posting some spicier takes, getting a lot of good interactions from folks. Having problems and posting about them, and people are getting back to me. So it just feels like a good community right now after we had like the exodus after Elon came and took over. I feel like the people who are left are good folks.
I feel like people have come back around.
Exactly.
'Cause
Oh
I know-
yeah, like Britt
I
coming
know
back.
influencers, they're like, I'm done. And then they come back and they're like, I miss you.
Yeah. I don't know. It feels fun on there.
Yeah.
So twitter.com/bradgarropy.
Good deal. Cecily, you want to go?
Yeah, I am picking vacation.
Yeah.
That is my pick. I said this was not going to be a technical conversation. So I'm gonna stay on that energy. This is why I'm picking that, because one of the things that I realize I do a really bad job at is not working. And in November, one of my teammates was like, "Cecil, you're always here." And I realized I had like 35 days of vacation in November. And I'm like, there's no way I'm going to burn 35 days before 2024. And so I'm like, you know what? I need to do a better job at stepping away from the keyboard, getting outside, just being a real person. I mean, not that I don't think I am, but obviously if you've not used your vacation, then something is wrong, right? And we gotta do better at that. So for people that are listening, it is December, early December as we're recording this. Like, please take some time off to go spend with your family and friends and people that you care about. I have been spending a lot of time with my son because that's who I want to spend time with. We've been playing Spider-Man 2. Big fan of the Spider-Man games on PS5. I think we beat it twice on like Amazing and on Ultimate thing, and we're waiting for like New Game Plus to come out so we can beat it again. We've been doing that. I watched this show called Invincible the other day on Amazon Video. It's like a cartoon anime situation. Really cool. I liked it. Apparently, it's been out for a long time, but again, I don't take vacation, so I don't see these things. So that's one of the things that we've been watching, and then just trying to get outside, man. I did a Spartan race the other day, like a Spartan 10K obstacle course situation. A lot of fun. And this is a whole just different community of people to like engage with. You know what I mean? As much as I love tech folks, it's also great to like talk to other people too. And so yeah, I'm picking vacation, get outside, go, eat some cake and do some stuff that's not
Cake?
computer related.
I'll take some cake. Do you have a plug for yourself too? Any community or anything you worked on? Anything you want to highlight?
I do have some blog posts that are coming out, but they're not published yet. And I was kind of hoping that they would be, so I could point them to you all. But what I am plugging is I'm planning to go to some conferences early next year. Super excited about like getting back on the road. Love talking to people in person and not just on video. As much as I love talking to you all on video. I'm going to be heading probably to Orlando for Orlando Code Camp early next year, and then a couple others that I'm looking at. So if anyone's in Florida and you're coming to any of the Florida conferences, React Miami is another conference that's happening too. A lot of folks are coming out for that. If anyone's in Florida and they're here for the Florida conferences, definitely come by and say hi.
Love it. I need to get an application in for React Miami. That's on my to-do list.
Yeah, do it, man.
I'm gonna plug the Lost Symbol TV show. So I'm a huge fan of the Dan Brown book series. Most people know the Da Vinci Code, and then in that series, there's 4 or 5 books, and I've read all of them multiple times, including once or twice in Spanish. And I just love them. So they came out with a TV show a while back, and I'd forgotten it existed. It's on Peacock, and I'm picky and grumpy sometimes about taking stuff from book to TV, like movie or TV show. So it was different, but I still enjoyed it. So I think it was really good. If you like the like national treasure type of feel, I enjoyed it. So it's called The Lost Symbol on Peacock. And then I will plug the Learn, Build, Teach Discord at learnbuildteach.com. We do weekly live coding sessions. I want to do more specifically on like career skills and people looking for jobs, because I think we have a lot of people in that area. So I want to add more of that type of stuff, but at least for now, we're doing live coding every Thursday. So we've been doing Leak Code, and then we did just yesterday Advent of Code Challenge, which was a lot of fun. So I enjoy that a lot, and I'm really proud of the community. So you can find it at learnbuildteach.com. But that is going to wrap up this episode. Thank you, everyone, for listening in. If you're listening on the podcast, make sure to leave a rating and review to help us continue to do the show, continue to bring on amazing guests like Cecil. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Cecil, for being here. In the meantime, that's all we got.
Thanks, everybody. See you later.
Cool. All right, hitting the official end stream button, too. Thanks, everyone in chat. Oh, actually, sorry. I'm going to raid over to Clarkio before I forget that.
I don't think Brad paid attention to chat at all.
I paid attention, but I cannot be derailed, right?
Laser
focused.
Yes.
James and I didn't do so good.
Multitasking, I like to call it. All right, I'm going to send everyone over to Clarkio's channel. Enjoy, everyone. Thank you for being here. Really cool. Hope you have a great weekend. See you later.
Man, in reality, I just think when